Good afternoon. It is Monday, October 6th, 2025. It is 5 o'clock, and this is a budget hearing of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I am Commissioner for District 1 and President of the Board, and I am calling this hearing to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak, and if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. Let's do a quick roll call. Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1 and President of the Board.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
Okay, we're all present and accounted for, and just wanted to clarify the thoughts on going forward is we've got an agenda. We've got one resolution for a tax levy, another resolution that if we want to adopt the budget tonight we can, and we've got a budget presentation. And my thought is we would go ahead and adopt the agenda, but my thought on proceeding would be we hold the hearing first, have the budget presentation by Mike, allow any testimony and questions, then at some point close the hearing, and then we can decide to proceed on these resolutions and discussion, if that sounds okay. Oh, and my mic isn't on.
Do we think we had adequate pickup from the room mic for the minutes? Okay, sorry about that, guys. So that's my plan to going forward, and we have an agenda. So can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Let me get my script for the public hearing.
See, I sat through 2 budget hearings and they didn't have a script.
Oh,
Up and down,
doggone.
and it was over.
Okay. So the purpose of this hearing is for the PUD Board of Commissioners to consider the 2026 draft budget. The public hearing is now open. I ask for your cooperation in the following procedure. Everyone will be given an opportunity to be heard. The PUD will be making a recording of the proceedings, and when you stand up, please begin by stating your name and district and indicate whether you are speaking for yourself individually or as a spokesperson for a certain group or both. Speak slowly and clearly. Only one person will be allowed to speak at a time, and any questions of staff are to be directed to the commissioners. And if you're calling in online, you have to be recognized by Shannon here so she can unmute you, but same procedure. Be recognized and please identify yourself. Okay, before we hear from the audience, is there a staff report? And I believe we do have a staff report to be presented. So Mike, would you please go ahead with that? Bear with us while we get the presentation up on the screen.
I can start with getting into presentation. So this is the 2026 budget presentation for the Jefferson County PUD. So the budget timeline, we did draft a budget and we had it posted to the website by September 1st. We did discussed it at the second meeting in September. Today we're doing our budget hearing. We'll have additional meetings as needed in October and November. We do have to have the budget approved by November 30th, 2025, but the county would prefer that it be approved by the middle of November just so they can get everything worked out, especially for the tax levies and stuff. Some things to keep in mind. There is a change in management that leads to a change in the 2026 budget philosophy. The FCS group is in the process of reviewing rates and conducting a rate study. The budget is a guide to the financial path that will allow the PUD to operate our day-to-day as well as complete our capital projects. And we used a balanced budget. That just means that our revenues are equal to or greater than our expenses.
So Mike, the FCS group, is that on water? Is that the one that's referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they did, the electric one, we just approved those in July. We've incorporated just the one that was approved in July. We did not include any other future ones in the revenues projections for next year. But yes, they're getting ready. We actually have meetings coming up in the next week. I can't remember, to start meeting with FCS to talk about the water rate study.
Thank you.
So looking at some budget foundations, these aren't all the ones that are included in the actual budget packet, just some highlights of ones. The revenues for electric and water are based on 5-year averages and the current rates as they've set today. Our revenues for broadband are based on estimated connections and average pricing. The tax revenues that we get from our property taxes will be split 80% to broadband and 20% to water. We've increased our expenses over the year from last year to 3.5% by 3.5% based on consumers price index. We've budgeted for 12 vacant or new positions, and our capital projects are based on work plans, needs, and predetermined work areas related to grants. And those are also being reviewed, so there's some play in that. Yes, Ken?
So I am wondering, given the fact that we're under new management, how many of those 12 vacant or new positions will we probably be filling?
I'm 2 months in, so I'm still assessing those needs, and I don't really have I'm not ready to make a commitment.
Okay.
That is, so.
So the evaluation is ongoing
That's
at this
right.
point, okay? And I assume you'll be letting us know when you decide, hey, I feel like we need to fill a position, we're proceeding with it. You'll keep us posted on
Will.
new hires.
The other thing I need to hear from you on our strategy, that could have an impact on staffing needs as well.
What
sense.
plan we're trying to implement, who you need to implement it with.
Takes me back to what I was asking about earlier. We got a lot of other work to do, so.
Right, okay.
And then,
Go ahead.
not to stop Mike in his tracks here, but I had one other question too, and that's, I guess, a question for the board maybe. You know, I'm not gonna argue it out this time again. That's the 80% to broadband and tax revenues. How long do we intend to keep on getting that much of the property taxes to broadband?
Depends.
Well, I'm curious as to what things are we gauging that off of?
Well, I think,
I have questions from the public of why are we giving broadband the money when it?
I'd say
by all-
let's save it for discussion. I think that's a good question for staff on, okay, that's the budget for this year, next year's broadband budget. What do you anticipate? But let's save that for deliberation, if you don't mind.
Nope. Throwing it out there because I
Please-
had questions about it.
Please continue. I think it's a valid question.
And then we're also continuing our emphasis on improving our safety and creating a culture around that safety. Presentation.
Do you have yours on continuous scroll? Okay,
Yeah.
shut up.
So some of the budget foundations, yes, I did. No, okay.
Budget foundations.
The second part of the budget foundations.
There we go.
Too many questions. I already got myself confused.
Sorry.
That's all right. Included in the electric distribution maintenance, we do have $1 million for tree trimming for next year. Also per RCW 54.16.100, and the compensation study has been ongoing and still kind of in progress. We've included $200,000 for raises in administrative and general expenses. And we've included our principal and interest payments based on amortization schedules. Getting into the budgets for the different utilities, we have electric operating revenues at $51 million, a total cost of service for $44 million, giving us operating margins of $7 million, non-operating margins. This is our aid to construction, loan proceeds, other money, anything that does not come from our normal operations in there for $2 million for total margins of $9 million, which gives us an budgeted tier times interest earned ratio of 4.65 and a net debt service coverage of 2.91, which is both well above our requirements through RUS loan covenants. For water, we have $4.5 million in operating revenues, total cost of $5.2 million, gives us a loss of operating margins of $700,000. Our non-operating margins, we have $300,000 coming in, so we have total margins of a loss of $404,000 in water. Broadband, we're budgeting about $2 million in revenues coming in, with a $3 million cost of total cost of service. So we're losing just under $1 million. Again, the non-operating margins is just under 700,000. So we're losing about 291,000 there.
Again, I don't know, deliberations, maybe that's the better time. The question, I know I've seen some emails come out about delays. So I'm just wondering, and that was since the last time we saw this presentation, are those numbers going to hold true with the delays that we're going to see on the broadband side of deployment? Is that something you want to talk about later or talk about now?
I guess if it's a clarifying question of this screen, so what I'm hearing
I
you,
don't know what's going to happen at the end of this budget cycle, the last 3 months versus what's going to happen in 26 because of delaying
Sure.
broadband deployment.
so I'll offer this. So with what we know about the schedule now of construction and reimbursements, do we anticipate that that will create a problem for this budget as it's drafted?
I do not. We expect that next year's estimates should be, I don't want to say accurate. We expect them to be steady. We're a little behind in picking up the amount of customers that we want to by this period in 2025. We expect to be caught up by the first of next.
I mean, to me, a budget is kind of a plan. It's not a,
I'm just curious if the no surprise, under the no surprises
Right.
thing is because,
So we feel mostly confident in next year's.
okay.
and then the second half of that again, and this isn't part of this display here, is how we're going to end up with this year's budget because of those delays as well. It's kind of a cause and effect. You know, are we going to wind up ahead of what we budgeted for or behind what we budgeted for because of particular delays? This is strictly on the broadband side of things.
So we are going to be behind just because we budgeted for a certain level of customers meeting the expectations of to get so many customers hooked up. We haven't been able to hit that because of some delays and stuff. So we will be behind a little bit this
Sure.
year.
So
And
I
I
see
get-
this being a compounding effect is what I'm getting at with the last 3 months of this budget moving into the next budget.
Yeah.
It's kind of starting to stack
Sure.
up.
So I guess the observation I would have, and this is based on what I've learned from Curtis in our going to knowing it together and talking to him about how things are going. The sense that I got from him is that he had to put the brakes on how quickly we were signing up customers because he felt like on the back end, once we had a customer and once we're making a commitment to them, we're going to go out and hook you up. We're going to be able to bill you. We're going to provide these services. He felt like we couldn't uphold those promises. So we had to put the brakes on, get our house kind of a little more put in order. And I think as Will is saying now, the house is coming together and it's in order. And a lot of that was the coordination with Gene's group on customer billing. And once people got handed to them that everything would work. And from Curtis's side that the system would work, everything inside the huts. So that's what Will is saying is consistent with what I'm hearing from Curtis, that we're going to be able to go faster going forward now that we've gotten some things worked out. And we're literally trying to do something that no other PUD is doing, residential ISP and customer relations and everything. So the work that they had to do with the billing outfit and NISE, nobody had done that before. So I guess that's the sense that I'm hearing, Dan. So I'm not hearing that it's going to keep stacking up. It's like a blockage that,
Right, but
hopefully
it's
we're
a
through it.
question that I needed to ask.
Yeah.
Because the public has to understand this.
I'm not saying your question was not
No,
legitimate.
I didn't take it that way.
Okay, I think that's the situation. Okay, Joe.
So just to add a little bit of clarification there. So you're right, a budget is a plan. Our plan has a particular take rate that we seem to be exceeding. So there is a delay, but there's also a higher take rate that may offset that. So I think staff is still recommending this plan, given what we know today.
Okay. Any other questions? Or are we okay to keep
Sorry, Mike.
going?
Oh, no, you guys are fine.
This is
These are
what
good.
you got to deal with when you're, bring a budget to a board.
That's right.
You get questions like
Well,
this.
Year after year after year, water operates at a deficit. So I'm assuming the money to make up that difference comes out of our general funds.
It's more or less actually coming from the electric side of things because we don't technically have a general fund anymore. We are not supposed to have a general fund.
That's interesting. So
I mean, the property taxes would be the only general fund, wouldn't it? Technically.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah.
So the electric business is subsidizing the water business and has been for years and years and years.
Yes.
And the rate study is gonna give us an advisory on how to get out of that loop.
I'm
So I-
looking forward to that.
Yeah, so I think when we get to deliberation, I have some comments on that too.
Okay.
Some comments and questions for staff. Please continue, Mike.
All right. So looking at combined, we're looking at a combined about $58 million in revenues, $52 million to get that revenue. So margins, we're making about 5.5 million just off of our normal operations, $3 million from our non-operating margins. So our total margins for next year are going to be about $8.6 million. I'm looking at our cash flow budget, kind of how are we going to spend that money coming in? So on the electric side, with the $9 million coming in, the original 4-year work plan that we had, that's kind of being, we had about $11.2 million in construction projects, $1.4 million in general plant purchases. We have $3.7 million in our principal on long-term debt. We add back in our depreciation of about $6.5 million a year. We're looking at borrowing $10.3 million. And then our total expenditures we actually are bringing in about $396,000. So our net cash inflow is 9.7 based on everything there. If we continue with the plan as we have it today. With water, losing the money, we have $3.8 million in construction projects, $115,000 in general plant purchases, $633,000 in principal payments, 1.1 million added back in for depreciation. We still have some local utility districts paying, so roughly about 442,000 on those. We have a $2.6 million loan that's going to be coming back, so we still have to pay out $355,000. So with the loss that we already have, that's almost $760,000 still that we have to outflow for water. Broadband, we have a loss of just under 300,000. We have $15 million in construction projects, another $500,000 in general plant purchases. We have a small principal payment that we have to make for them, 387,000. Their depreciation is a little bit less just because we haven't capitalized everything. So add 84,000 back in. We have grants of the $15 million to cover that. We still have 802 in expenditures. And so we have to pay out $1 million. So when you look at it all, we're looking at a $30 million construction projects next year, another $2 million in general plant purchases, 4.8 million in principal on long-term debt. We got $7.7 million in depreciation. And with the money, about $32 million coming between the LUDs and the grants and stuff. So our net out to about 761 total expenditures. So we would put 7.8 million back into the bank between all three utilities.
Okay.
Kind of comparing the electric utility budgets from 25 to 26. And we've increased the revenues about $2.7 million. Our operating expenses, 438,000, which gives us about a 2.2 million increase in net operating margins. Just a $244,000 non-operating margins. So about a $2.5 million total net margin increase from 25 to 26, which brings our net tier up about 1.02%.
Mike, okay, net tier. So that's the change in tier from
So yeah,
the
because we
simple tier ratio from 2025. Okay, thank you. When I saw that, I didn't get what it meant.
Yeah.
So it's just the difference in
that,
tier.
yeah, just showing
And
what the
it's a
change.
positive increase in tier
Yep.
of 1.02. Thank you. Okay.
And a positive increase in the debt service coverage of 0.44.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
One quick question too. It just seems like on the total operating expenses between the 2 years, just inflation and everything else, 438,000 does not seem to me like that's an accurate number. I would expected that to have been higher. What all goes into that line there of operating expense?
That's
That will
power.
only- Is that wages and?
Wages, it's power cost. So it's a net difference too, because we did budget as high, some of the higher positions that we've had in the past. You know, we saved money there, but then BPA increased. So it's a net increase of 438,000. It's not, that's why you probably are thinking that, well, it should be a higher, but because there are some savings out there that we've done by the positions that that we're budgeting and trying to just save some costs some other places. We've reduced some, we've had other expenses increase, so it's just that net.
Well, I know we've had rate increases and other things. I can understand the operating revenue being up like it is. But I'm not sure that I'm buying the expenses aren't gonna go up more than that, but okay, it is what it is, so.
Okay. There again, it's a budget, we're budgeting for what we think is gonna happen, not what's gonna actually, a couple years ago, we unfortunately had inflation just jump on us in the middle of the year. And so, we're doing our best to try to net everything out where we're not increasing expenses too terribly much.
But I guess following up on Dan's question, the methodology that you're using to come up with the estimates for total operating expenses, would you say they've changed, or are you using the same principles in trying to estimate?
It's the same
What's it?
principles we've used the last probably 3-4 years.
Okay.
Same way where we've kind of did a straight across the board increase based on CPI, but then it's as you're adding wages, trying to figure out what positions need to be
Okay.
budgeted for, that can have an effect on things. And then with with BPA, you try to figure out the best you can on that one as
Okay.
well.
Any other questions on this one?
Not at this point.
Okay, please continue, Mike.
So looking at the water utility, you can kind of see this one, they're all decreases in the changes, operating revenues, looking at the averages, it's kind of just how that water did worked out, saving a little bit of money there again, just decreases in what positions got budgeted, how we're looking at the cost across the board on things. So increases, it actually increased our net operating margins by $146,000 loss. The net operating margins went down a little bit, just as we figured aid to construction, people paying to jump on the services and everything. So it increased the net loss by $186,000.
So Mike, I'm gonna kind of follow up on Ken's question here. It's unusual that you would see declining operating revenues in a growing utility, even if it's, growing fairly slowly. I'm trying to remember when we first adopted kind of that significant water rate increase, what year that was, but I'm kind of wondering if the 2025 budget and the operating revenues, if we were just taking, those rate increases and assuming a certain amount of growth in revenue, and then and I realize that revenues vary in a year, and I guess on water it's going to depend on rainfall. If you have better rainfall, maybe people are irrigating less, but maybe also if the rates go up, maybe they just decide to turn their sprinklers on less frequently, and they buy less water, and we gain less revenue. But do you have any comments on having a lower expected revenue budget in
So part of what I did,
6 versus 25?
because we do have we have the tiered rates and stuff on water. I kind of took away using that the higher tier so much, because we
Okay.
don't always hit up to that.
Okay.
Because for 25, a lot of times we've been way under budget.
Okay.
So tried to even it out a little bit more. I kind of averaged it out a little bit differently on those tier rates and stuff.
Okay. So you relied.
We were
Yeah.
relying on the tier rates in 25 higher
Okay.
tier rates more than
And you're
what we
being-
could have.
You're being more conservative
Being more conservative
with your expectation on revenue and what those tiered rates will generate.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions on this page? Or please keep going, Mike.
All right. So the next one is just the broadband budget changes. There again, looking, as we are able to get more people hooked up, we have and about $1 million in increase in operating revenues. But because of that, we also are increasing our operating expenses a little bit more, just personnel and more expenses to generate that revenue. Also, it increases or makes our net operating loss a little bit less. And then the non-operating margins, you'll see the big difference of $10.9 million. And that's just in how another one of these ones where I had in 25 included some of the grant money in the non-operating margins. But because it's hard to budget when that actually comes in and stuff, I took that out for the 26 budget. Not saying that we still aren't going to get it, but just didn't try not to budget for it as much
Okay.
and
So-
rely on it.
So the non-operating margin, that's more grant money.
Yeah,
And-
that's more the grant money.
And that doesn't, and I guess this is a budget. So there's a difference between what you budget and how you account for money when it actually comes in.
Yes.
You have to account for it in a way that keeps the auditors happy, and you're using the whole Gatsby or whatever they call that accounting practices.
Gatsby,
Gatsby.
cash basis,
Okay.
but accrual basis and
Okay.
everything else. So.
All right. So questions on this one?
Yeah, so the expectation then is that that $11 million deficit is going to be covered
Yes.
by the grant money.
Yeah, that will be the grant money coming in. And I just did not actually call it out and budget for it.
And that would mean if that's covered, that there's actually, at the end of the day, a positive margin.
Correct. Yeah, when that
There's actually a little bit of profit beginning to show up there.
Well, it's in assets though, right?
well, yeah, it's basically that grant money is reimbursing us for the expenses the construction that we're doing out. So it's not actually any actual profit per se coming in, but it would make it look like, yes, they are making money because we would have a positive net margins at the end of the day.
And that money is buying fiber and other infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So it's showing up here as a capital asset that's not been depreciated yet.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and we have BTOP fiber that's 20 years old. Are we depreciating anything out in broadband yet?
No, that's on the electric.
on the ele- that's
Yeah,
only
the
on the
B,
electric side.
yeah, the B top is on the electric side of things.
So at what point would you expect to start depreciating out broadband assets?
Hopefully within the next couple of months. We are working right now, Amanda
Could
Isaac.
skew these numbers.
Yes, it could do it, but because I have not had anything to go by, Amanda Isaac's actually working on a couple of our work orders right now to get those capitalized, so we can get those capitalized and get those depreciated.
So this is an evolving story.
This is-
Figuring
yeah.
out how to categorize these assets, how to pull things out of
Yep.
electrical into broadband.
Get all the dollars accurately put together and make sure the assets are all set up properly.
Okay.
And One more question,
Sure.
and this may be for the general manager more than for Mike. On the operating expenses, and we have Ken asked the question, Commissioner Collins asked the question earlier about employees. Are we expecting some of those 12 employees to come in on the broadband side in 2026? Or are we at the level of staffing that we need to do the work, maintain the system, et cetera, in broadband?
I think that's kind of a Will question. Did you catch that, Will?
Will has said that we're full staffing on broadband, but it's TBD. There's still, I think, some opportunities to deploy our assets more effectively, and maybe we need some project, TBD. I'm not ready to
Okay.
make that commitment yet either.
Okay. So Mike, I'm a little time sensitive. Do you think you can wrap up the presentation in like 5 minutes or so?
Probably pretty close because
Okay.
a lot of this is the same information we've gone over
Okay.
a couple of
See what you
different
can
times.
do.
So,
See what you can do to zoom through it.
yep. So next one is just kind of a graph showing where and how our expenses lay out on each division. It's 39% of the electric cost is the cost of purchase power. Another 15% is A&G. So that's just showing kind of how all the costs are broken out. Next one is the water. You can kind of see how the expenses are broken out and broadband expenses. You can kind of see where they're all broken out and what we're spending money on. Next one, this is just overall, looking at everything, different categories. You can see between labor and benefits and power costs, that's over 50% of our costs. operating expenses. Looking at, this just kind of shows you the capital and debt principal costs. Our broadband work plan and our electric work plan are our two biggest expenditures on those categories. Looking at our capital and debt principal costs, we have about $37 million altogether that we have to spend outside of our operating expenses. Electrical capital is 11.2 million. This kind of just shows some of the projects that we're going to be looking at redoing in 25 or in 26. But there again, Joe, as new manager, is looking at reviewing some of those and kind of helping prioritize some of those a little bit different.
And I got to ask the question, and that is on this $11 million, do we have funding secured? What is the plan for 2026 to fund the 11.27 million?
Yeah, letter of credit and a potential to go to RUS, right?
Yeah, so we have if we have the emergency line of credit through CFC for $5 million if we need it, and then we'll continue working through RUS.
I get the emergency, but I would classify this as an emergency spending. This is capital improvement spending, which needs to be part of our long-term process. So we put things off in the past that leads us to getting to bigger and bigger and bigger numbers. So financing is going to be important for this in 2026. So I'm just curious of where we're at in the process of securing, going after funding, not emergency funding, but just long-term funding.
I didn't refer to that as emergency funding. I wasn't seeing this line item.
Well, Mike may have been the one that said emergency.
I did say, originally when our line of credit was set up, it was set up for emergency, but if we need it, we are still looking at the RUS. We just, with the re-looking at the 4-year work plan that Joe's doing, we've kind of put the RUS on hold a little bit. It's still out there, still an option to do.
And what was the amount of funding available through RUS?
We originally were looking about doing $70 million through
70
RUS.
million.
Yeah, we haven't applied for any of it yet, though.
Okay.
That
And-
was kind of where I was going as to where we were in the process of
Right.
securing funding.
And I guess, and your question kind of gets to this issue of cash flow. And as we're looking into 2026 projects, I think the question is kind of, what is your cash flow outlook? Do you look at having to get into that letter of credit, the 5 million credit that we can access at any time? Do you look at us pursuing getting to a level of certainty where we can decide, yes, engaging in some long-term debt through RUS makes sense because now we know what we're going to be spending over the next. What are your thoughts on that as we go into this year?
So I like using a line of credit to get certainty about what you need to borrow, because you need to know what your certainty, what a utility can often do is borrow on their plan, which sets them up for potentially borrowing more than they need to borrow. So a line of credit gives you the opportunity to have certainty around what you need to borrow, and also looking at, there's at least 2 other borrowing options that are that work well in our space. So RUS isn't the only option. So yeah, I'm seeing that line of credit is giving us some opportunity to be certain and look at our other 2 options before we cut a deal on what our debt is going to be.
Okay, does that answer your question, Dan?
Somewhat, I guess I'll put my 2 cents out there is my look at the line of credit. That's something that should be paid back within the same budget cycle. And I don't know if that's what you're thinking on this is or not. So,
Within the same year?
yes, so I'm not looking at the line of credit as a long-term funding.
Well, I'm not either.
mechanism.
I'm not either.
Well, that's kind of the way
The
I
difference
heard.
between 1 year and long term, there's a lot, there could be a
Okay.
big gap there.
And I can see, I mean, again, you said you're 8 weeks in. How long is it going to, you've made one change to the plan to move transformers, and it's going to take you some time to get comfortable with this list of 4-year work plan items and when and how things need to be done and what are the options and when's the time to pull the trigger on 70 million or 50 million or 20 million or whatever it is.
Maybe we're talking past each other a little bit. The line of credit, I would think, should be resolved within a year. So, so maybe we're on the same page there. So it shouldn't go beyond the, and it could go in. So if we're in 2026, say we need to draw on that line in July or August, should have it resolved and in a permanent debt by the end of 27. Is that?
I look at it as a stopgap measure for emergencies where this cash flow issue or whatever, we gotta spend $4 million for something that's critical to keeping the system up and running, but we know we have the funds coming to pay that debt off.
Because the interest on the letter, that credit is higher than long term.
So
Yeah.
it's a compounding effect. If longer we keep that money or keep that balance running, the more it costs the utility.
Sure.
I agree, but I think inside of a year, that's.
Okay,
reasonable.
let's make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, all right. Please continue, Mike.
All right. So then we're looking at our water capital. We got about $3.8 million. Here's some of the projects that we're doing: pipeline replacements, water tank maintenance, just some of our wastewater capital work, and some other miscellaneous things. Broadband capital, got a $15 million in projects that we're doing out in the grant areas for next year. And then some of our fleet capital, we got $805,000, $190,000 for electric, $115,000 for water, and $500,000 for broadband. We have some other capital of 1.2 million, doing some facilities improvements, possible a new storage building for warehousing, storing our material for both fiber and electric. Need some new servers, some tools, and some contracted engineering for 405,000. So looking at a change in capital budget projects from 25 budgets to 26 budget, we netted a difference, an increase of $147,000 between the 2 years. But because we reduced some capital, the electric work plan, and then everything else, so it was only a $147,000 increase in between the 2 years. Then just looking at the long-term debt, we started this a couple years ago with the commissioners, kind of just showing as we go through the budget season where we're at on things. So for the electric and broadband side, we have $86 million as of the end of July that we owe. Starting paying off between 2037 and 2049 on it. Water's the same way. We owe about $5.5 million in debt. Pay off the next one in 26, all the way up to 2045.
You need to speed up a little bit, Mike.
Okay.
One quick question too, was it listed, was the $2 million on the Water Street loan that we took? I know that hasn't been initiated yet. Where are we at in that?
We haven't borrowed really any of it. That's the Washington State Public Works Board for the, no, that's for the business fiber one. We haven't really started drawing any
that'll-
funds on that one.
That'll show up once we
Yep,
start pulling.
once we start.
And do we have a timeline? Are we expecting to do that in 26 or no?
We expect to begin in February of 2026.
Okay, so that's something I hadn't heard about in a while, so it will be on the radar in 26.
Yep. Okay, speeding up.
Speed up.
Safety budget, some of the things that we're doing, capital projects to help with safety, other equipment, staff hours, spending more time in meetings and stuff. Just for how we're gonna spend some of the safety budget. And that's actually it.
Okay, great. I gotta run through this hearing thing real quick, and then I'll get us to some action points. All right, the floor is open to testimony from the public. Each person will have an opportunity to address the commissioners for initial period not to exceed 3 minutes. Do we have anyone who would like to comment on the budget? Phil?
Okay, Phil Stover, District 1, speaking for myself. I was here last year at the same hearing. And some of the same concerns I'm gonna repeat some of the same concerns, but I have a little different sense of where we're going now. We still have a 4-year work plan at the moment, somewhere between 68 million and 74 million. We're adding or have added staff, office space, and vehicles. We have started a significant rate increase plan that includes increases through 2028. And all this is driven by a sort of a perfect storm that didn't get caused by a storm, and it really appears that the growth and demand is all being addressed at once rather than sequentially. And that's causes some risks that you've all been talking about. Procurement timelines, unplanned costs. In that realm, how do you manage $11.3 million of construction projects at once without unplanned delays and other issues? How do you do financial management, that your cash flow that you've just been talking about? These are all big challenges. I don't think this utility's had before at this level. I think in the last year, the work on the rate increases shows a lot of concern for trying to do the best possible job we can for the customers. And I think I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged by the looking at where the priorities are and where the value is, and streamlining where we can. And I think that just needs to keep going. And I wish everyone in the room the best possible outcome for ourselves and our customers, because it's important. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. I'm not seeing anyone else in the room who probably would testify. Do we have anyone online who would like to offer any testimony on the 2026 proposed budget? And Shannon, do you see any raised hands from anybody?
So was there any online or correspondence related comments or?
You're gonna
Online.
no written comments. Okay.
Got a hand.
Oh, we do have a hand. Is that Roger? I have my glasses on.
Unless he's giving his phone number away, it should be.
Okay, so phone number ending in 246, you are recognized.
Trying to get them.
We're trying to get you in the room. Bear with us. We won't start your clock yet. Start talking just so we can tell when you can hear us and we can hear you. Try.
Okay.
talking. We can hear you,
How's
Roger. Proceed.
Okay, question. Electrical A&G is 15%. Water A&G is 19%. Broadband A&G is 65%. Would somebody just put that in perspective, please? It's a question. Thank you.
Is that your whole comment, Roger?
That's my question. I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roger. All right, let's see if there's any other comments before we go to staff response. Is there anyone else?
That was a question.
I hear you, Roger. You're done. I'm asking to see if there's any other comments or questions, and then we'll go to staff to respond to your question. Is there
Thank
anyone else? Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. Okay. Let's see. Does the staff, do you have anything to add? And is it possible to respond to the question that Roger raised? Is that the pie charts that he's referring
Yeah,
to?
it's the
Okay.
pie chart that he was referring to, I believe. And it's just because of where and how things are accounted for. There's more stuff that on the broadband side that goes to the A&G. There's not, it looks like it's administrative in general expenses, but it's just by our US standards where things are, what line item they're recorded on the financial statements. More of them are recorded in the A&G than what they are in the maintenance.
Would you say as that business line becomes more mature and
As it more, yeah.
that those numbers will change and start looking more like our other business lines? Is that
Yes.
fair?
Yeah, they will change, but currently just the way everything's working, as we learn and figure out where and how to code things based on our US bulletins, those will change. So most of them are right now being recorded
Okay.
as the A&G.
So it's a little bit of an anomaly right now, it sounds like.
Ben is a significant anomaly. There's a somewhat different makeup between workers and people that are charging their time to operating expense that's on the water side. So that's why there's a slight variation between 19% and 15%.
Okay. Are there any persons in the audience or online who would like to add non-repetitive information or evidence about the 2026 budget? So non-repetitive questions or comments. Phil?
So in the presentation, when I was comparing the electric budget for 2025 to 2026, I'm wondering, was that the starting budget for 2025 or is it the projected ending actual for 2025 on those line items?
And I guess, and I'm just gonna say, is there any other comments or questions that are non-repetitive before I turn to staff to respond to that? Going once, going twice. Okay. Let's see.
Beat me to the question in a roundabout way.
So staff, do you wanna, are you,
I can respond to that one.
okay,
So the 2025 budget that is in the presentation was the approved budget of 2025. It's not the beginning budget, it's not the end budget. It was what was approved for 2025.
okay. Does that answer your question?
It raises the other, it raises the question.
We're getting a little time constrained here, so just,
So if that was just the plan, I mean, where are we really gonna end up?
My notes, Phil?
okay.
We're not doing an actuals on 2025. We're doing the budget for 2026.
All right. So how I anticipate us going this is getting to the point where we close the public hearing or the public testimony part of the hearing, and then we can begin deliberation. And then I'm going to have to do a time check with you guys, and I'm hoping we can pass the tax levy resolution. But at this point in time, commissioners, do you have any other questions for staff?
I do not.
And
No, but I will follow up similarly once we're done.
okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public testimony portion of this hearing. I'm going to ask the commissioners, looking back, and I guess for procedural sake and for Joel, I'm guessing we're not going to approve the budget tonight because I think we're going to run out of time. But if we pick this up, we pick up the budget again, because we have to act on it before, certain dates. Would we be continuing the hearing until that time?
It's really up to the commissioners. What you've done in the past is kept the hearing open and not closed it. But it's really if you believe that there's other testimony that may come in, it's at your option to leave it open until you're ready to act on it.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is we've closed the public testimony for now. What I wanted to ask is, would the board be comfortable bringing up the resolution on the tax levy? Because it's oftentimes not been a controversial issue, just to pass it so that it's checked off for
Yep.
Mike.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a resolution, 2025, which is as drafted, does not need to increase the regular levy versus the district's prior levy amount, not including increases that are exempt, basically the new construction. So we have this resolution. Okay.
All second.
Okay, we have motion and a second, not seeing any raised hands. All in favor of the motion to keep the tax levy as it is, aside from new construction, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye, done. Okay, one's done. All right, back to where we are. Well, let's go ahead and have some commissioner discussion, and I just wanted to do a time check. I know Ken, you usually have to check out by 6. I know Dan, we could keep going if we wanted to, but a budget is a plan, and I realize the sooner we pass the budget, then staff doesn't have to keep bringing the budget back to us, but we will continue to work on the plan and what we're doing. So I liked it last year when we got the budget done, but I'm feeling like there's some fairly significant questions still. So I'm not sure if we're going to finish this tonight. So I just kind of,
We asked a simple question as first for staff. Has anything come up tonight that the staff would feel would require us to go further for more information from what the conversations have already taken place between public comment and the board so far?
I haven't heard anything. I mean, you're curious about what our borrowing plan is. That isn't directly relevant, in my opinion, to the budget. That's still a future discussion, and the commission would have to approve debt agreement. So that's still in your purview. You could approve the budget and still make a decision about how we're going to finance debt later on.
so I'll bring up an issue that I have. And again, I don't know that it has to be addressed in the budget, because I think it really comes back to a water rate question. And it's kind of the question that Ken had. It's like we've got this we've got this deficit. When I'm looking at page I thought I was on page 7 earlier. Get back to that.
So I can address that.
Yeah. So page 7 of the presentation. I don't know if you can pull that up, Mike, if you would be so kind, so we can all be looking at the same numbers. But this is the utility budgets. It's the broad view of the electric versus the water versus the broadband, and it's the one that lists the minus 707,000. If you could make that a little bit bigger, Mike. Underwater, and realizing that you're trying to be more realistic on revenues. Page 7, is that it? There we go. But again, and we've had years where we haven't been negative. So it hasn't always been negative on budget, but it's standing out here. And I can't remember how much of an increase we did on water, but just, one quick back of the napkin thing was, well, for short 700 grand, I just did the math on, we got about roughly 5,000 metered customers. What would an increase in the base fee need to be to cover $7,000? And it's about $7 a month, $6 or $7 a month in a base fee increase would cover that. And I realize I don't think that's a budget question. I think it's a water rate question, but I was kind of curious if we, what is an average water bill for a residential customer? How much, what percentage of our customers are low income? Because I realize that affects if you adopt a rate increase, but a big chunk of people are low income. You're not going to necessarily get the revenue you wanted. But I'm concerned too about this pervasive. It feels like it's been pervasive in a business that should be mature by now.
Well, I'd like to give the CFO an opportunity to respond to this, but I can obviously see that we have a timing issue here. We are in the process of going through a water cost of service analysis that should bring some recommendations back for the commissioners to consider in resolving this, but that is work that's ongoing. It's the priority was getting the electric cost of service analysis done, which resulted in commissioner action. And now we need to do that with water. And we're doing that in a period where water is at a low usage. So we're going to hopefully bring back some recommendations timely with making some decisions beginning into 2026 that can hopefully rectify the situation. But we do have a timing problem. The COSA would be done by now.
Yeah, and we did didn't we use FCS for the water rate thing last time when we came up with the tiers? I thought we did, and that was a few years ago.
3 or 4 years ago.
So do we have a date that FCS will be able to do the presentation on
Well, you're saying January.
cost of service?
Yeah.
Who says January is too aggressive? Somebody whispered in your ear.
Ken's right. I mean, we have a board meeting in November and one in December. Are we gonna have a quality conversation about water rates? I don't know.
No, I mean, we can try to push them through, but no, I mean, the timing, because we have 4 board meetings throughout the rest of the year now.
Special meetings.
It's true.
Yeah, we can do special meetings, but some of it is going to be their timing as well.
Driven by what they can.
Driven what they can do in the time. But Joe and I are meeting with them next week to start to kick off and really go see, and we can ask them, part of this is, we're conservative on both our revenues and our expenses, budget a little bit lower on the revenues, budget a little bit higher on expenses. That will make up, depending on what actually happens, it will make up that difference in that operating margin sum, because we want to budget conservatively. If we budget high revenues, they don't come in. I get the pitchfork because I did over budgeted.
Sure. So I guess feedback, I think from me anyway, is if you could have that conversation with FCS, if it's possible on October 21st, to give us any feedback. If it's not possible to have the feedback by that date, if you could just let us know how that conversation is going, what the timing of that might be. Again, I don't think that has to affect the adoption of this budget, but to me, it's an obvious question.
Yeah, I'd say I'm frustrated. we can't run this utility on 4 hours of meetings a month. I'm sorry. I feel rushed. And I don't like that. I don't think we're doing the public our best job. I don't think we're giving staff enough time to do things the way we need to do it. So that's something we need to address in the upcoming year.
Well, and we can also, like you say, we can also schedule special meetings. I think a budget is an important thing, especially if, you know, and I'd be interested in Joe's feeling on this too. If we want to get this done sooner than later, we could schedule a special meeting just for the budget and wrap the thing up.
And I'm fine with that.
And going back to water again on the back of the napkin, I think there's some things we have to keep in mind, you know, that when we talk about the rates, you know, I'll go back 3 or 4 years, and I hate to say this, but you know, I felt at the time we did not adopt the rate schedule that we should have 3 or 4 years ago. And we can't do that again this time. When we pay consultants to do this work, if we're not going to do it ourselves because we don't trust the consultants or we're giving them bad information, because 90% of the work they do is information we give them. So we need to be prepared for whatever that consultant comes back with on this cost of service, that we pay attention to it. Some point there's going to be pain. The more we try and keep cutting back to ease the pain, the more stronger the pain comes the next go around. And that's getting to be budget cycle to budget cycle now, not rate survey, cost of service study to cost of service study. So keep that in mind. But, you know, we're going to be under more pressure with failing systems out there in the community. They're going to be coming to us, and we're going to have to make them come in whole as best we can, but there's still going to be cost to the utility on the water side. That's the first thing is, you know, an LUD, we have to pay for a lot of what happens with an LUD that we don't recover the cost for. So, and then there's low income, right? Increasingly, we're going to see more and more low income. We know what's going on at the state. There's things coming our way that could get past us that we're going to have to pass on to the customers. And we just can't keep doing that. We have to have a better plan here moving forward. And that's part of what the rate study is going to have to show us. And the other thing is the capital needs that are piling up. The water side is looking, you know, per capita for the number of customers, the amount of work that's going to have to be done on the water side is astronomical that's coming up. And we may not be able to get the funding in a timely manner that we need to do it like we did with the broadband. So there are a lot of things, the capital, not as which is the least of them, that are coming up on the water side that we have to be honest and prepared for. And we need to start messaging to our customers that we have some heavy lifts coming.
So I'm just going to ask, what would the appetite be? So we've got our next regular meetings on the 21st. What would the appetite of the board be to have a special meeting the week of the 28th?
Well,
October.
Staff would appreciate knowing what questions need to be answered, because I'm
just looking at this as the board needs to deliberate on this budget, and I guess we can individually feed you questions as they come up to be prepared for.
What I'm hearing though is a lot of concern around water cost of service, which is going to take months to develop.
Okay.
And so we're not going to have that information inside of the time period that we're talking about the budget. So what I'm trying to find out is what questions from this budget, absent, it is true, what Commissioner Tupper is talking about reflects some of my concerns about the water utility as well. But we do need to have a professional analysis of some of those anticipated costs and revenues and bring forward to the commission some remedies. But that is going to be no earlier than January.
To me, that's outside the budget process.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess coming back, issues inside the budget process that were.
I don't have any problem with meeting on the 28th in the afternoon.
Okay. Well, before we jump to that, what questions do we have questions on this budget that we feel like we have to be answered before we could take action on it? Because my main question kind of related to the rates, and you've answered that. It's going to take some time for FCS to come back. We can take action on it this year that would affect this budget, make it better. And I agree with you, Dan, especially with the water budget. The electric budget, unless things happen really differently than this budget, it's going to produce, a bonus. It's going to be in the positive. It's the water budget that's concerned. Do we have questions that keep us from adopting this budget, or are we ready to adopt it? Because it's just a plan.
I don't think I have any questions beyond what we've been discussed tonight that would stop me from saying that we have to revise the budget. That's why I asked staff early on if they had heard anything. So
Okay.
I think we're stuck with what we've got in front of us, knowing that there's gonna be some heavy lifting and, you know, to be TBD. There's some things that will still remain to be TBD. We have a new general manager who wasn't involved in the early stages of this
Mhm.
budget, so he's gonna have to find his way as we move along. So
Okay,
I don't have anything at this point, but I do want to go back to something that Phil touched on earlier. And I'd already had this kind of notched down tonight. Is I think, and part of our next process, right? I'm outside of today,
Mhm.
is moving forward. I think we need a true up at the beginning of next year on just what our budget did in the previous year, and then quarterly reports on trajectory of where the new budget is going. It's something we really haven't. We talked about it, but we never really did that in the past. So that we feel more comfortable when we get to October. We saw what happened the previous year and we know where we're going in this coming year. And I realize that that's starting the clock rather than looking back. But I think we need to start that process moving forward.
and I just want to add on to that, because my comments and questions were partly based on how real is this? And when did we get real numbers last year? And it was about the end of February. We were able to close out the revenues from the prior year. So I agree, Dan, and I think that process of quarterly kind of looking at the budget. So just for Joe's benefit, we haven't waited until August, September to start developing and presenting the budget. We've kind of started on like at the end of the first quarter. And then I think Mike in previous years have also, when the books are kind of closed on the end of the year, he's given us a report, you know, how did the revenues look? And then he pulled up the budget and compared it. So I agree. I think those have helped. And I think that we can get better. And the whole issue of that 4-year capital work plan, as you kind of look at these issues, you looked at the Dana Roberts substation and Hastings substation and came up with a solution there. As you look at these other big cost drivers and then say, okay, we should do it that way, or we should do it a different way. And here's the potential budget impact. When you can share that with us, it's helpful.
So I move that the board approve a resolution adopting a budget for the calendar year 2026.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion for good of the order?
Just along the same line of what we were just talking about, I think also next year at this time, before we get into October, we should, as part of a true up at the beginning of the year, quarterly reports, we should have some sort of an idea trajectory so that when the board is looking at next year's budget, that we can say, here's where we think the year end will really be. Get that out. I think we have to have a little more confidence and not TBD. We need to be looking at trajectories and how things are actually playing out. So,
And I think when the general manager is less, you know, he won't be able to use, I'm only 8 weeks on the job. That wears off. Eventually, you know, you're the guy, you know, you're not the new guy anymore. So.
Well, I am only 8 weeks on the job, but I would say that I'm very comfortable with and have observed best practice in the past that we would do quarterly actuals on our budget. And I have no problem if that's the wish of the commission to bring back before you quarterly progress report. That would also be responsive to Mr. Stover's comment, I believe.
I think it really helps.
Call the question.
Yep, call the question. Okay, we have a calling the question. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, budget's passed. Second year in a row, we've done it on the night of the hearing. But in response, Joe, I think that approach has really helped avoid surprises. And it's helped us, once we got to the budget process, it just goes so much smoother because we've been getting regular updates on it. And it's basically, how are we doing on a regular basis? So I think it's just good practice.
So I'm not hearing any objection from the commissioners to doing quarterly actuals update.
Yeah,
No.
cool. Okay, well, I think we've made it through the agenda, if I am not mistaken. And it is now 6:04. And so just for folks watching, we had the budget hearing, we passed the hearing. The hearing is formally closed. So the hearing is done. Do we have anything else to say, Joel, since it was a hearing, or did I cover all the bases?
I think you got it, Commissioner.
Okay, all right. The budget is passed, our business is done, and at
6:04, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.